Amelia had always been a dreamer. From the time she was a little girl sitting by her grandmother's porch in the small town of Willow Creek, she dreamed of love that was pure, unwavering, and real. Not the kind of love she saw in movies, glittered with fancy dresses and rehearsed lines, but the kind that could survive storms, the kind that could see beauty even in brokenness. Life had not been easy for her family, and Amelia had grown up understanding sacrifice. Her father, a factory worker, lost his job when machines replaced his hands, and her mother spent most of her life caring for Amelia's younger brother, born with a heart condition. Those hardships shaped Amelia, teaching her that strength was not in what a person owned but in how they loved, how they stood by others when no one else would. So, when she met Daniel, everything in her heart shifted. Daniel was not like anyone she had known. He was quiet, thoughtful, and carried an air of resilience that fascinated her. He had once been a firefighter, a man who had given his strength to save others. But a tragic accident during a rescue had left him in a wheelchair. His legs no longer obeyed him, and though his body bore scars, his spirit carried even deeper ones. He lived a life of silence in his small cabin outside town, avoiding pity, avoiding questions, and above all, avoiding love. But Amelia, with her warm smile and unshakable kindness, had walked right past his walls without even realizing it. She didn't see a man broken, she saw a man who had given more than most ever would. The town whispered, of course. When Amelia announced she was marrying Daniel, people questioned her. Why him? They asked behind her back. She's young, beautiful, full of life, why tie herself to a man who can't even walk? But Amelia only smiled when such words reached her ears. For her, love was not about walking into a room with grace, but about walking into a soul with courage. She didn't need a man who could dance with her at parties, she needed someone who could stand with her in truth, even if standing meant sitting in a chair. And Daniel was that man. The days before the wedding were filled with mixed emotions. Daniel himself was plagued with doubt. He loved Amelia deeply, but he questioned if he was being selfish. Could he truly give her the life she deserved? Would she grow weary of pushing his wheelchair, of watching him struggle, of facing the cruel stares that often met them when they went into town together? Many nights, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he should set her free before it was too late. But every morning, Amelia's laughter and the way she looked at him, as though he was still the firefighter who ran into flames for others, pushed away his fears, even if just for a while. The wedding day arrived, simple yet beautiful. It was held in the town's old church, decorated with wildflowers Amelia had picked herself. Friends and family gathered, though the whispers hadn't stopped. Some came out of genuine love, others out of curiosity, wanting to see with their own eyes this unusual union. Daniel sat at the front in his wheelchair, dressed in a navy suit that Amelia had chosen for him, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in his firefighting days. He wasn't afraid of flames anymore, he was afraid of failing the woman walking toward him in a white dress. And then it happened. As Amelia walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on Daniel's. The world seemed to blur for him, the murmurs, the judgment, the doubts, all vanished. It was only her, glowing with love so pure it felt like light itself. Tears brimmed in his eyes, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel broken. He felt chosen, but just before Amelia reached him, something extraordinary happened, something no one expected. Daniel gripped the armrests of his wheelchair, trembling, as though battling against his own body. For months, secretly, he had been undergoing painful therapy. He had never told Amelia because he didn't want to raise her hopes in vain. Doctors had said it was unlikely he would ever walk again, but Daniel had refused to give up entirely. Quietly, away from everyone's eyes, he had pushed himself, taken agonizing steps with braces, fallen countless times, bruised his pride and body, but he kept going, driven by one thought: on our wedding day, I want to try. As the music swelled and Amelia took her final steps toward him, Daniel gritted his teeth, placed his hands firmly on the wheelchair, and with a cry that came from somewhere deep inside, he lifted himself. Gasps filled the church. Some thought he was about to fall, but slowly, painfully, Daniel rose. His legs shook, the braces hidden beneath his trousers trembling under the strain, but he stood. He stood as Amelia reached him, her bouquet trembling in her hands, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "Daniel," and he managed a smile through the sweat and pain. "I wanted to meet you standing," he said softly, voice breaking. "Just once. Just today." The crowd was silent, overcome by the weight of the moment. Even the most judgmental eyes in the room softened as they witnessed not a man in a wheelchair, but a warrior who refused to be defined by his limitations. Amelia dropped her bouquet and threw her arms around him, steadying him, holding him up as though love itself was his strength. And in that embrace, Daniel realized he wasn't standing alone, he never would again. The ceremony continued, and though Daniel could not remain on his feet long, the memory of that moment would live forever. Their vows were spoken not just as promises, but as truths already lived. Amelia vowed to love him in strength and in weakness, in joy and in pain. Daniel vowed to never let his broken body break his spirit or their love. And when they kissed, there was no pity, no whispers, only applause, tears, and hearts forever changed. The wedding became a story the town never forgot. What began with doubts ended in faith. People who once judged now spoke of courage, of the kind of love that made even the strongest knees weak with humility. Amelia and Daniel's marriage was not easy, life never became magically simple. There were struggles, days when the chair felt heavy, nights when Daniel's pain returned like an unwelcome guest. But there was also laughter, resilience, and an unshakable bond. And whenever Amelia was asked why she chose him, she always smiled and said, "Because love is not about what a person can do, it's about who they are when everything else is stripped away." Years later, children in Willow Creek would run past the old church, pointing at the spot where the man in the wheelchair stood for his bride. It became more than a story, it became a reminder. That love is stronger than pity, that kindness is more powerful than judgment, and that sometimes the bravest battles are the ones no one sees until the victory. And so, Amelia and Daniel's story lived on, not just as a tale of a wedding, but as a legacy of hope, that brokenness does not make us unworthy of love, and that true love has the power to make the impossible possible, even if only for a few trembling steps down the aisle.